Hi, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody. And those of you watching us back, welcome. I am very excited to introduce to you Elizabeth Wathuti, who is going to be our closing keynote speaker for the Green Vision Summit and Expo in Malta. And she's very kindly agreed to come online, have a bit of a chat with me, allow me to ask her some questions and get to know her. Now, she's got an amazing story to tell and is using her story to really create change in the world, not just locally within her community, but also globally. And, honestly, these are the type of leaders such as Elizabeth that I would love to see more of, because Elizabeth's taking action. She is going into the community. She's a founder of a business, but she's also getting involved in all sorts of things, including taking her story to people that wouldn't necessarily normally hear it. So she was one of the opening speakers at COP recently, which I imagine was a bit of a change to your normal day-to-day. And I'd love you to actually introduce yourself, because I really don't feel like I can do you justice. I'd love you to tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and what brought you to where you've got to today.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me here today and for giving me an opportunity to talk about, the work that I do and share a little bit more about my story. So my name is Elizabeth Wathuti. I am an environmentalist and a young climate leader, and I'm based in Kenya, but I also work with a lot of young people that are also young African climate leaders across the African continent. I am also the founder of the Green Generation Initiative that nurtures young people to love nature and be environmentally conscious. And I will definitely be sharing more about this, I'm sure, during our conversation today. And I also serve as a commissioner at the Global Commission on the Economics of Water. And I also sit at the commission in my country as a youngest presidential appointee sitting at the Nairobi Rivers Commission. So all these are some of the roles that I play within my space, but really very keen on impacts on the impacts of climate change with regards to how I do my work and the solutions that I bring. And part of why I do what I do, it's so many things that have inspired me to get to where I've been. And one, I have been raised and brought up in the most forested region in Kenya, which means that nature is one thing that has deeply inspired me to a point where I am able to connect with my surrounding. And I think being able to connect with your surrounding enables you to also fight for its protection. And I think that has been what has been happening with me. And secondly, also being able to witness challenges firsthand, what I like to call the human lived experience in terms of the impacts of climate change, that enabled me to see the connection between how we treat nature, how we treat our environment, and how the impacts of climate change are directly affecting communities, the droughts, the floods, the challenges with food security. All these are issues I've seen firsthand. And I think for me, it's been a call to myself. What is it that I can do as a young person to contribute, to make a difference? And how can I rally other young people across the continent and around the world to make sure that we are the voices? Because whatever decision is being made today, we will live longer with the consequences and will be the generation that will be the most affected. So we believe that, I personally believe that young people are the leaders of today. And that is why I'm personally stepping up to be, the change that I want to see in the future and today as well.
I love that, being the change I want to see in the future, but also enabling all these other voices within your communities and to actually be heard. Because it's all very well me sitting in Germany, as we had this conversation earlier, but a lot of the people who live in Europe do not see the impacts that you're seeing on a day-to-day basis. And so, enabling this voice to be heard and really for us to understand really this impact on your communities is super important. So tell us a bit about how you get this message across to people.
So I have different ways in which I get the message across to people. And one of the ways is being able to be the change that I want to see. I think that's very important. Leading by example, being able to demonstrate that as much as we are living in a continent that is most affected by the impacts of climate change, we are not victims. We've build resilience, and we have communities at the same time that are stepping up and taking up solutions. So I've chosen to also lead by example, and that is through my organization, the Green Generation Initiative, which is an initiative that I started to ensure that we are creating a generation of individuals that are environmentally conscious, and now even instilling environmental consciousness in all walks of life, which I think is what we need to see and the kind of world that we need to have. So this initiative for me has been very key because we've been focusing on greening schools, and by greening schools it means we are able to support the young people and the children to understand that they are a part of the solution, but at the same time we are able to lead, to support them with experiential learning. We were able to lead specific initiatives and projects in schools. And one of our main projects has been the Fruit Trees for Schools initiative, where within the schools that we pick, especially the ones that do not have, adequate access to water, they don't have adequate, access to green space. So all these are schools that we focus on so that we can change and uplift the face of the school and transform it to a way that, these children can be able to easily access nature and connect to nature, because at the same time they are forced to go for long distances to access parks or forests, which they have to pay for. So if we're able to create that small park and ecosystem within their school compound, then it means they can have, their learning environments will be improved. It means they'll have, clean air, water access. All these things are, things that they get to benefit with. So for the Fruities for Schools project, what we do is we pick these designated corners in the school compound and we grow mixed species of fruit trees. I'm saying grow because planting is one thing, but seeing to it that every plant and every tree planted gets to maturity now that is growing. So we do this with the school children through the eco clubs that we start, and the children, each of them has a tree that they adopt each to make sure that it grows up to maturity. And I think for us this is very key because throughout that process they're able to learn. And at the same time, we are looking to also seeing how this project also, contributes to the national goal of, planting 15 billion trees by 2032, which is actually a presidential initiative in Kenya. You just saw recently we had a national tree planting day where everybody in the country was expected to contribute and be part and parcel of that. So I think for us, it's very key that we are able to contribute to the same in the same way. And the second way that I pass my message is also now drawing the link between the work we do at the grassroots to influencing policy at the global scale. Because I'll give you an example. The trees we are planting and the life-bearing fruits that they bear will also not survive on our planet. So we are going to need to address, the climate crisis, which means getting everybody involved. And there's a saying that says for us to change everything, we're going to need everyone. We're going to need businesses, we're going to need corporations, we're going to need governments, we're going to need individuals, institutions. We're going to need everyone to play a part and parcel. So that is why I've connected my work now and come to the global platforms to make sure that I can also call on leaders and different entities and individuals to make sure that they are also playing a part and parcel. And a key example was the speech that I delivered at COP26 during the World Leaders Summit in Glasgow. And this was in front of about 110 heads of states and the whole world within that setting, because it was a critical moment where the leaders were going to make key decisions for my generations, for our future, for the entire 2 weeks. And so I felt for me that a responsibility that was weighed on me was very heavy. But I did appeal to them, and my message was very clear around opening your hearts, which is because I am a strong believer of the fact that some of the challenges we are facing today is because we have not accepted, to have that love and compassion for our people, for our planet, and, decided to come together to create an environment and a planet where humanity and nature thrives at the same time.
There's so much coming out of what you're saying, and obviously the key messages being around taking responsibility, being able to influence, which you're teaching the children at school, and you're bringing this back to the senior heads of state to. There's so many parallels on this in terms of regreening, as you're saying, nature, but also the humanity aspect of it, which is obviously a big part of the work that you're doing at within Kenya to
Yes.
actually humanize or rehumanize and help everybody see the direct impacts that we can
Yes.
all have. So taking it into action.
Yes.
Amazing. So if you're like when you're working with the schools and when you're dealing locally within the communities, what would be one change that you would love to see the rest of us in the world actually, waking up, and if you, it's almost like you've got the biggest alarm clock ever. What would
Yeah.
that actually say to the rest of us? The rest of us that don't see this on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think if there is one change that I would want to see in the world, or one change I would want to make, is to ensure that, we have access to fresh water for drinking and sanitation for all around the world. This is a challenge that I have seen even, with the schools we're working with the children, with the communities. And I am a strong believer that water connects us to so many things. Water connects our boundaries, water connects our communities, and water enables us to have food to eat. Water enables us to have, decent lives and livelihoods. Water also enables us to have good health. So right now, as we're speaking, we definitely have, we have so many projections of, for instance, half of the world population will be living in water scarce areas by as early as 2025. And this is a big challenge, which, tells us that, we have to address, these challenges at the same time. And I have been to institutions and schools where, they're not able to, number one, grow their own food because there's no access to water. Children are not able to have access to even drinking water, let alone the fresh drinking water, access to its water itself. And I have had instances where I visited communities where women have had to walk for long distances, as long as 12 miles every day, to try and get drinking water for their communities. And for me, this is a story of resilience, because they don't just sit there and wait for things to happen. They walk and, try and find this water. And I remember at some point when I was delivering one of my speeches, I did give this key example of one of a woman that I met in Samburu trying to hand dig a well so that they could tap into water, which, yes, they did find water, but it was not clean or, fresh for them to drink, but that's all they had, and they had to, consume that water. So for me, water is a very key component that also reminds us that, number one, we have to protect and restore our existing ecosystems. We have a lot of water catchment areas in our, our continents, our world, that are being destroyed every day. And I think the further this continues, we know these are impacts that can be reversible if we do not take urgent action right now. And secondly, also making sure that we respect our planetary boundaries and understand that we are not only supposed to be looking at the needs of today, but also looking at how do we prepare for the challenges of the future. What is it that we are leaving for the generations to come in terms of the decisions that we're making today, which is why it's very critical to have, young voices also being able to be part and parcel of, these decisions that are being made today, because that's what is defining, the future. What we do today defines how the future will be like. And I think for me, that would be one thing that I would really love to change. And secondly, because it's also very much interconnected. The same way we say, if we do not protect nature, if we do not address the nature crisis we're at, we will not meet our climate targets. So all these issues are so much interconnected with how well we respond and, manage and govern our natural resources. And I think for me, it's one thing that I would definitely would love to see change.
Yeah, what comes out is as you're talking is just really about how this is really a global problem, and it can't just be dealt with on the ground in one or two countries. We need this global community, and we need to hear the voices of the people that are going to be dealing with this in the future, like you say, because we need to engage a lot more people. And if everybody's in that position where you are and they're taking action, they're taking responsibility, and they're influencing in their communities, imagine the difference that we can make quite quickly.
Yeah.
And I agree with you completely. All of us have got a responsibility to nature as much as we have to people. And it's almost like, how do we engage more people in this message? What are you What are you doing to try and engage that wider audience?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I have learned, and I've learned this from different people, is the power of collective action. And I strongly remember one of the great, African leaders that has inspired me greatly, the late Professor Wangari Maathai, who was the first African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize. She always espoused on that power of one, that each of us can make a difference, but collectively we are a force. And I think for me, I have been a really strong believer of the power of collective action. That even as young people, when we come together and have our voices together, it gives us even a higher bargaining power in policy places, in higher decision making places, because you are a collective voice. It's voices from different corners of this planet. It's voices from different corners of, my continent. And I think for me, that is one thing that is very key. And there's also the aspect of understanding that each and every person can make a contribution. And so I've always insisted on being able to get people to understand that what their contribution is equally important within the work that we're doing, so that we're not just leaving this work to a specific group of people. We're not just leaving this work to environmentalists. We're not leaving this work to young climate leaders, but this is a responsibility that we take up as humanity, as a moral responsibility. Because honestly, for me, protecting the environment, protecting nature, and addressing the climate and the ecological crisis we're at is a moral responsibility. Why? Because we have to make sure that this planet is habitable for everybody, including the generations that are not with us. And I think for me, that is one message that has always been very key. And so there's a story that Professor Wangari Maathai always told, of the story of the hummingbird. And, it was this huge forest that was on fire, and all the animals are feeling hopeless and helpless and running for safety on the other side of the forest. And this tiny little hummingbird decided it was going to do something about the fire. So it flies to the nearby stream and picks a drop of water, flies back and forth as fast as it can, a million times over and over again, putting each of these drops of water in the forest. And at this time, there are much bigger animals like the elephant that has a very huge trunk that can draw so much water within that river. But all these animals are looking at the bird and asking the bird, what do you think you can do? You're too little, your beak is too tiny, your wings are too tiny, you can only draw a little drop of water. But this tiny bird looked at all these animals and told them, I love this forest and I am doing the best that I can. And my appeal for me is always for every person to do the best that they can. Perhaps we have children in a school that are trying to grow trees within their school compound. That is the best that they can. But even in terms of policy out of the world there, are we doing the best that we can? Are we protecting the much bigger ecosystems within our capacities? Because we have that big much that we can. And I believe everybody has got that huge responsibility. And I think for me now, it's about, people that now, the little hummingbirds, making sure that we are drawing everybody else, the elephants, everybody else, to make sure that now, for us to change everything, all of us are making that contribution. So for me, that has been, one of the ways that I have been, building up on that power of collective action. And of course, working with other young people, I started to make it my responsibility, since I delivered my speech at COP26, that every year I would find a way to, raise resources and support to get other young people across the African continent to have their voices heard at the Conference of Parties. And I did that at COP27, where we had about 35 young people from across Africa, from different countries. And the same as last year, I was with about another 35 young people from across the continent. And not just having them physically present, but making sure that even before the forum, they've been well capacity built, they've been trained, and they have had briefings in terms of what exactly needs to be done within that setting, and how they can best use their time for the 2 weeks to influence policy and to even make their voices heard in a bigger way, because I believe that our presence is only impactful if what we are saying influences decision, and it's important that we have young people present in those rooms. And so I've seen a lot of them, even the ones that I was with at COP27 in Egypt. Already some are now young negotiators, negotiating on behalf of their governments, which is exactly what we need to see. How do we create the next generation of African leaders that are going to also shape and change the narrative, Africa's green growth agenda, in the same way. So for me, that has been very key.
Amazing. And yes, we thank you for the work that you're doing, obviously, but just being able to generate attention, but also to put it in a way where people can actually hear it, like you say, ensuring you're in the room when these kind of conversations are happening. And this is obviously a big part of what we're trying to create with Green Vision Summit and Expo. And we're super happy that you're going to come along and help us with creating that narrative, and also co-creating with the people that are there. We don't want this to be another conference where everyone's talking, everyone agrees and nods, and everyone says the right thing, but nothing actually happens. This is why we're bringing change makers like yourself together to really try and co-create and sort of share and learn from one another, because that to me is the tipping point where we can bring people together who are taking action, who will learn from each other, will listen to each other. It's almost fundamentally different to what we see in quite a lot of the big leadership forums, to enable further change. Because I personally think that we've all got things that we can learn. It's this kind of taking a global thing and making it localization. But what is it for you? What is it that you want to get out of the Green Vision Summit Expo?
So first, I think it's really impressive that you're hosting the Green Vision Summit and Expo. I think it's a very important and critical forum for like-minded individuals, organizations, and people that are looking to even run businesses in a manner that is sustainable. I think it's a really good platform to create that, because most often these forums have only been known to be just for environmental, people within the environment space. But creating a space that allows for, different sectors to be present, to understand how do I run my business in a way that respects planetary boundaries? How do I run my business in a way that is sustainable? How do I run my business in a way that I'm also enabling humanity and the planet and nature to thrive at the same time? I think it is very important. And one of the things I hope to achieve out of this summit, number one, I'll definitely be sharing more about my story and speaking more about the work that we do here in Kenya, across Africa, and around the world, together with other young people. And of course, opportunities for collaboration. That would be one thing that I'm also open to within this forum. And I'm sure there are a lot of interesting people that are looking forward to hearing more of this story, more of this work that we're doing, and we'll definitely be really glad, to be able to put that out there so that people that would be interested to collaborate and, engage further, we will have that opportunity. And then secondly, also looking to network a lot with different people, including the other key speakers, the delegates, the people within the Green Vision at that moment. And I am a very key believer of the fact that when we come together collectively, we're able to achieve so much. Part of the work that we do within my organization is actually even supporting corporates in terms of understanding how to best, support their corporate social responsibility. And I believe within that setting, then there will be, that conversation as well in terms of the different corporates and how we can be able to engage moving forward. And of course, looking forward to, knowledge sharing and ideas as well with different delegates and the people that will be within the Green Vision Summit. And I'm really grateful to be invited to actually speak in the closing segment of this session.
Yeah, great. I mean, you offer a lot, and you've been talking a lot about how you can help others, but what's the help that you need? If you were going to put a request out to all the people that are listening or will listen to this in the future, what is the thing that you need help with? How can people help you?
Yeah, I think I will definitely be able to put out a lot of the perspectives in terms of the projects that I'm currently running. And of course, the different ways that people can help me is to support me in terms of making a maximized impact. And of course, there is just only so much that one person can do. But with support from multiple, individuals or organizations, it means that we're able to upscale and expand our initiatives across different counties in Kenya, for example, or even expand our initiatives across different counties in Africa. And the good thing with the models that we have implemented with our grassroots projects, they're very replicable all around, across different countries at the same time. So one of the support would be to be able to support in upscaling and expanding some of these initiatives that I have highlighted within our network. And of course, secondly, also being able to amplify this work that we do so that it could be able to reach, many more people, a wider audience, and also at the same time enable in that outreach for people to understand that we all have to be a part and parcel of this. And when I mentioned earlier that everybody has got a responsibility to play, and that for us to change everything, we'll need everyone. Everybody has a different, responsibility. Some will have a responsibility where they're more comfortable to speak up about the issue and, compel leaders, or different people to make different changes. Some will have a responsibility to even maybe finance projects that have already been existing within the space or that are being led within the space to address these challenges we are talking about. And some will be able to spotlight, grassroots projects that are already happening around the world. So I think for me, it's just identifying where within the scope of your business, your corporation, your government, or your organization, what is that one thing that you could be able to, also support with whenever you hear of such initiatives and such projects that, it's not just talking about it. We're not just influencing how people respond to climate change, but we're actually demonstrating that these are real actionable solutions that exist, that are true, that are doable, that can be upscaled to actually, deliver on this impacts and actions we are talking about. And I think for me, that would be a call to action. And I hope I can engage with as many people as possible that are actually willing to help to get the work going and upskill to the next level.
Well, thank you so much. My heart is kind of like buzzing at the minute, because even just listening to you, listening to your energy, listening to your passion, listening to the fact that you're not willing to take this lying down and you're willing to keep on showing up. I mean, this is what leadership is about. And you've talked about your role models. Well, you're a role model to so many people with your story and the way that you engage in this whole topic, because you show your compassion. And to me, this is definitely more of what we need to see in the world, is leaders like you showing up, sharing, and challenging everybody to take the responsibility that we all need to take and play that part that we need to play. So thank you for being a leader in this space. Thank you for coming and sharing with us in Malta. I'm totally looking forward to actually getting to meet you firsthand rather than just see you on a screen. And I'd just like to ask, is there anything else you'd like to share with everybody before we say goodbye for today?
No, I just want to, invite everybody who will be in Malta to stay in for that closing segment and to be able to also connect, because I'll be there for the entire period. So I'll be happy to connect with as many people as possible during my stay within that forum. And of course, to encourage everybody to remember that you have a role to play and each of us has to make a contribution. And we cannot, we have to make a contribution and make sure that we take real time action and not just talk about it, but, be out there leading by example within our own institutions, within our different corporations and governments. We are making sure that, everybody has to lead by example for us to get where we need to get. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. So you've heard Elizabeth speak. She will be there in Malta. And as she's invited, please come along, get involved, and feel free to reach out to herself and also all of our other speakers. The reason we're doing this is because we want to co-create, we want to collaborate, we want to bring people together with Elizabeth's energy to ensure that we can support and co-create a better future. Thank you, Elizabeth, so much for joining me today, and I can't wait to meet you soon. Take care,
Thank you
everybody.
so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.